He conquered more land than any human in history, feared from China to Europe. When he died, his soldiers killed every person who witnessed his funeral. Then they stampeded 10,000 horses over his grave to erase every trace. Then they diverted a river over the burial site. 800 years later, not one person knows where he is. In August 1227, in the rugged terrain of northwestern China, the 65-year-old conqueror was still commanding his final campaign. Then he died. Yet, no single cause of his death was ever confirmed. Chronicles offer fractured accounts: a sudden high fever, a fall from his horse, or a mortal battle wound. The silence was entirely deliberate. Mongol spiritual taboos dictated that speaking of a ruler's death was a dangerous, sacrilegious act. The most powerful man on earth drew his last breath, and his own people chose to leave his final moments unwritten, initiating an 800-year void. According to the 14th century Persian historian Rashid al-Din, the funeral procession itself became a rolling slaughter. Soldiers carrying the Khan's body back to the Mongolian steppe executed every living soul they encountered along the route. Once the body was interred, the burial attendants who dug the grave were immediately executed by their guards. Then a third group of soldiers slaughtered those guards, collapsing the circle of knowledge until only the dead held the secret. Decades later, Marco Polo recorded that even his grandson, Kublai Khan, had no idea where the founder was buried. Deliberate, systematic violence successfully erased the path, leaving only rumors. The oldest records point to Burkhan Khaldun, a sacred peak in northeastern Mongolia. The secret history of the Mongols reveals that the Khan prayed on these slopes before battle and demanded to be returned here in death. In 2015, French archaeologist Pierre-Henri Giscard bypassed restrictions to scan the summit with drones and detected a 250-meter artificial mound that resembled an imperial tomb. Yet the mountain remains a living sanctuary protected by UNESCO and strictly guarded by Mongolian law. Verdict: this is the most likely resting place, but legally and culturally, it is impossible to excavate. His death in northwestern China shifts the search southward to the Ordos Plateau. Yet, transporting a corpse over 300 miles in the blistering August heat of 1227 presents a grim logistical reality. Biographer Frank McLean argues that rapid decomposition would have made such a transit virtually impossible. This matches 17th century Mongol chronicles, the Altan Topçi and Erdeni Topçi, which claim the imperial coffin arrived in the north entirely empty. Instead, only his personal tent and clothing were buried at Ordos. Verdict: the empty coffin theory is historically documented, but the actual remains are still missing. High within the Khenti Mountains lies Ikh Khorig, the Great Taboo. For generations, this 240 square kilometer forest remained strictly sealed, patrolled by ancestral guards who executed all trespassers. In the 20th century, Soviet military forces maintained the restriction, keeping the region entirely closed to suppress Mongolian nationalism and prevent worship of the ancient conqueror. Scientific research only became possible after the Soviet collapse in the 1990s, leaving modern experts with less than 35 years of access to a wilderness protected for 8 centuries. Verdict: 800 years of absolute protection is exactly what a secret burial needs. Persian chronicles and Mongolian oral traditions converge on a far more radical method of concealment: a diverted river. Both sources describe imperial guards temporarily rerouting a local waterway, digging the grave in the dry riverbed, and then releasing the torrent to erase the site. For an army that routinely redirected waterways during warfare, this was a plausible engineering feat. Modern explorer Albert Lin used satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar to scan the terrain, identifying numerous ancient burial mounds, but the actual tomb remained elusive. Verdict: a redirected river explains why surface searchers keep finding nothing. Tracing ancient waterways may matter far more than analyzing the soil. In March 2026, the search shifted from soil to genetics. In Ulytau, Kazakhstan, a team of scientists from the United States, Japan, and Kazakhstan excavated elite graves linked to Genghis Khan's eldest son, Jochi. Medieval historian Rashid al-Din noted that Jochi died only months before his father, making their remains genetic mirrors. The team extracted DNA, identifying the rare C3 paternal marker associated with the imperial line. Verdict: this genetic trail offers our most precise scientific compass, but tracking a lineage is not the same as finding a grave. The search remains unanchored. The hunt for a grand imperial monument assumes there is a monument to be found, while archaeologist Jan Behrman notes that elite Mongol burials of this era typically contained wealthy grave goods. Biographer Jack Weatherford argues that the Khan demanded a simple burial, laid to rest with almost nothing identical to his common soldiers. Others raise the possibility of a sky burial, where the body was left on a mountaintop to return entirely to nature. Verdict: if the ultimate conqueror chose an austere, unmarked return to the earth, archaeologists are searching for evidence that does not exist. The 800-year silence is no historical accident. Biographer Jack Weatherford notes that the Mongolian people harbor a deep, enduring resolve. Their founder must never be disturbed. The failure of high-tech foreign expeditions is the direct result of Mongolian choice, not bad luck. When researchers arrived with ground-penetrating radar, the government enacted strict heritage laws, blocking all excavation. The hunt has moved past archaeology into a confrontation with cultural consent and spiritual taboo. Before we ask where Genghis Khan lies, we must ask if we have the right to disturb his peace. Perhaps the conqueror's final victory is his enduring silence. Should we keep searching or finally respect his wish to remain lost? Share your thoughts below.